Okay, welcome to lesson 2. Hello everyone, we are back, still learning our basics. We've done buttonhole stitch up the top, we have expanded it a little bit, we've laid a coordinate, we've done all of these sort of lovely basic things. Hopefully by now you're feeling really confident with your buttonhole stitch. Now what we're going to do is open it up a little bit and introduce a lot of negative space in this kind of beautiful lacy net stitch. One of the reasons why I've been talking so much about really concentrating on just the method of your buttonhole stitch is because now what we're going to do is reverse it. A lot of lace making, a lot of needle lace making is about just kind of working ambidextrously, turning the piece around, working with your needle pushing away, working sometimes from right to left instead of left to right. And so it really helps to have some really kind of basic fundamentals about the way that the stitch is constructed so that it becomes a little bit easier to reverse. So that's what we're going to do. That's going to be probably the trickiest thing about this lesson, is reversing your stitches and just wrapping your head around that. Then we're going to go back and forward and back and forward. It's fun, I promise. I love it. Then what we're going to do is a border. And a border is, I think, one of the most fundamentally important parts of making any piece of lace. It finishes everything beautifully. It adds a little raised edge. It gives it a little bit of a three-dimensional quality. Covers all of the stuff around the edge, anything that's been messy. It covers up all of your loose threads around the edge. It's a really beautiful way. It often ties your work together in a way that is incredibly satisfying. So that's what we're going to do. Bit of net stitch and a border, and then we're going to take it off the backing. So let's get in. So start by cutting a length of your lace thread, just something comfortable to sew with, and thread it onto your needle. Now to secure the tail, just run it up the coordinate a little way, and we're going to start in the top left corner. And just secure that in place with a buttonhole stitch. Now again, this is just worked in buttonhole stitches. You're going to start with one buttonhole right next to where you're starting, and you're going to pull that quite tight. Now leave a gap of approximately 2 stitches and work another buttonhole stitch. And this time leave it just a little bit loose so there's a nice gap. Now you're going to work another buttonhole stitch directly into the same space. And this one you're going to pull quite tight. Leave a gap again, 2-ish stitches, and another buttonhole, this time leaving it loose. And back into the same space. Gently pulling that thread nice and tight. Now continue on. Next one is loose. And this one you're going to pull tight. And loose. And tight, all the way down the row. Now when you reach the end of the row, what you want to do is really open up some space there by bringing the needle down. You're going to wind it around the coordinate, just passing it under, so that you can start your row a little bit lower. You might even wind it around again, just to bring it down even further. And now you're going to be working from the right to the left, so we're going to reverse your stitches. which means you're now going to dangle your loop down. You're still creating a loop. It's going to dangle down now, starting from the right and dangling around to the left. And then just like normal, just as you always have, needle down, pulling it into that loop that you've just created. And remember this one, we're going to leave loose. Create that loop again, dangling down from the right to the left. Needle back into that previous same space. And this one, you're going to pull tight. Now dangling down right to left again. Ready to work your loose buttonhole stitch. Then back in your same space, and this one you're going to pull tight. It often helps to come back and just pull down on the stitches you've made just to check that they're all sitting properly. Now working a loose buttonhole stitch and a tight one into that same space, and so on and so forth all the way down the row. Keep checking those loops, keep making sure everything's sitting evenly, and keep working that net stitch. And again, reaching the other side of the coordinate, you're going to pull all your stitches down, wind that thread under to start your next row from further down. Now let's reverse again. So now you're going to be working from left to right. So pull those stitches down, make sure you can see the loops that you're going to be working in. Now your loop is dangling from the left to the right, working back in that direction. Loose and a tight. Now back at the other side. Let's wind the needle down. And we're reversing again, so right to left, loop dangling down from the right to the left, and needle coming down. Now changing your threads in this particular stitch, obviously we can't weave the tails in the body of the work like we could with buttonhole stitch, so we're going to use the coordinate. Just run your needle up the coordinate, just hide that tail, leave it a little bit of space. And you can cut it off, grab yourself a new length of thread, and you're going to bring it along the coordinate in the other direction, just so that you've got a little bit of spreading out of all of the bulk there. Doesn't matter if you've got lots of things in the coordinate, lots of little tails, we're going to cover those up in a minute with a border. And just secure it onto the coordinate with a buttonhole stitch and you're ready to go. finish your thread off by running it along the coordinate and cut the thread. You're all done with your ground stitches. So it's time to make a border. We are going to go all the way around the form, starting in this top corner, right there. Now we're going to use some offcut threads to pad the border and raise it up a little bit. So you're going to take one of your offcuts and take the needle, load it up with a length of lace thread, and you're going to start by just pulling it underneath the coordinate in that top corner. But you're going to leave a nice long tail here. That's going to be part of our padding threads. Now take the needle and just pass it through the fold in one of those padding threads. And then together with the tail, you're going to let all of those threads just lay along the edge there. You're going to raise that border up nice and thick. Now to make sure things don't tangle, you can hold all those threads down with your thumb. Now you're going to reverse your stitches again. So we're now working right to left with the needle pushing away from you. So your loop is going to dangle outwards from the right around to the left, and you're going to push the needle away from you, bring it underneath the coordinate, underneath all those padding threads and up into that loop that you've just made, and pull it, incorporating all of those threads. Now the next stitch you want to do directly next to it. In a border, you want to make sure your stitches are quite close together. The closer together they are, the silkier they're going to be. So loop going outwards from the right to the left, needle coming up into that loop. Out from the right to the left and needle into the loop. Really working those stitches nice and close together. Now changing your threads when you're working on a border is so easy. You're going to use those padding threads to start and end the tails. So I still have plenty of thread to stitch with on the needle. I'm just going to put a new one in now. Lay it along with the padding threads, hold it down with your thumb, and you're just going to keep stitching with the old thread until you've run out. But you've got that new thread ready to go. And now I've run out, I'm going to take the needle off the old thread, lay that down into the bundle of padding threads there, and pick up the new one. Onto your needle. And if there's still a tail poking out, you can pull it through. Just make sure you don't pull it all the way out. Bring the needle with the new thread up through the last stitch that the old thread made. And go back to stitching your border as usual. Now if stitching in this direction with your needle pushing away from you isn't comfortable, you can always turn it around. You can just stitch however feels best for you. This is just the way I like to do my borders to save me getting all of those threads in the way, but sometimes I like to turn it slightly to the side as well. In the corners, you just want to add a few more stitches just to bring it nice and smoothly around that corner. So I'm going to do quite a few into that same space in the corner, maybe 5 or 6 little stitches, just to make it nice and smooth. And if it looks like your padding threads are thinning out a little bit, if they're starting to run out, you can just add another one, an offcut or a new thread, just to keep it a similar width the whole way around. Now, another brilliant side effect of a border is that you can adjust where your stitches are going to sit. So if in your net stitch you're finding some of the rows just sitting at odd places along the coordinate, you can shuffle them around with your needle a little bit and just hold them in place. So you're going to buttonhole up to where you want your thread to sit. Then just push those stitches around with the needle and you can bring them up so that they can sit nice and evenly, or however you really want them to sit. So just be really mindful as you go along of where all your stitches are meeting the coordinate and what you can do with that, with the border. Holding them in place, shuffling them around, bringing your rows up and down, and just really encouraging those spaces that you're creating where your stitch meets the coordinate. And don't forget to keep adding those new threads all the way along while your old thread is still long enough to stitch with. Use that bundle of padding threads to really get rid of those tails, make them nice and secure. Now, just in the last couple of stitches, let's take a couple of those padding threads out just to thin them slightly so that there's just a few less chopping off at once. So I'm just going to remove one every now and then through the last few stitches, and we'll end with 2 to 3 padding threads. Now just keep stitching over those last few threads right back to where you started. And when you're done, you can cut off all the last of those padding threads. And I like to add another stitch or 2 after you've cut them off, just to make sure that you're covering up the ends. Now let's take care of the end of the final thread. Ideally, what you want to do, if you've got room, is just kind of push the needle up, wiggle it through some of those threads of your border. If you can, if your stitches are loose enough, you're going to pull it through and just incorporate it into that border. If, however, your stitches are too tight for that, that's fine. All you're going to do instead is just sort of wind the needle around the edge of that border. Just around and around a few times so that it's sitting flat. And then you've taken care of that tail. And there you have it. You can cut your thread. Congratulations on your beautiful finished triangular sampler. Now let's remove it from the backing. This is so exciting. What you're going to do is take your fabric and separate those layers. Take the scissors and just start gently cutting those threads. A couple of cuts and then open it out. A few more cuts and pull those layers separate. Just keep cutting and pulling until you've opened it all the way out. And then when you're done, you can just very gently, very simply lift your lace off its backing. It's going to have a few stray threads in there. If you can pull them out with your fingers, that's great. And sometimes you might just need a little set of tweezers to grab out the stubborn ones. And there is your beautiful little triangular needle lace sampler. So yeah, there's your triangle. Feel free to make more, make them bigger, make them smaller, have fun with it. If you are already a seasoned lace maker, feel free to use any stitch that you'd like, or multiple stitches. Put in as many as you'd like. Just in those experimentations, make sure you're keeping to our colour palette, keeping to the size, either 6-inch, 3-inch or 1.5-inch triangles. And also just try and keep the edges quite straight and smooth. We don't want to add too many flourishes on the edges because they're going to tessellate right up next to each other. So a nice straight edge. Yeah, just have fun, experiment and play. And send them in. I can't wait to see what you come up with. You may also like to experiment with some small ones. These are just the same stitches in the smaller pattern. Or combine them in a different way, like this one. So that's it for our basic stitches, and we are going to come back in the next lesson and add some flora and fauna. So until then, I will sign off and see you in lesson 3.